Today, I'm bringing you a deep dive into two dramatic and disturbing events: the blizzard that struck Tibet and left many trapped, and Typhoon Matmo's onslaught in Guangdong and southern China. These are two very different disasters with distinct impacts, and together they paint a worrying picture about extreme weather, preparedness, and human vulnerability. Let's walk through both, compare what went wrong and what's being done, and see what lessons might carry forward. First, let me take you to Tibet. Over the past few days, a sudden and intense blizzard engulfed the Tibetan side of Mount Everest, particularly along the eastern slopes and in the remote Karma Valley region. Reports suggest that nearly 1,000 trekkers, support teams, guides were caught by surprise when the snow and rain intensified. They were trapped at high altitudes around 900 meters, roughly 16,000 feet or higher, an environment already hostile and precarious. Tents collapsed under the weight of accumulated snow, paths became impassable, and hypothermia and altitude sickness became real threats. In response, local rescue teams, villagers, and officials scrambled. Hundreds were guided down to safety in stages, crossing treacherous terrain with the help of oxen, horses, and on foot. By now, about 350 trekkers have reached a rendezvous point in Guangdong, and contact has been made with more than 200 others still in transit or stranded. Authorities continue to manage the evacuation in groups to avoid further risk. Meanwhile, one hiker reportedly succumbed to hypothermia and altitude-related illness in a different mountainous region in Qinghai. This disaster is especially jarring because of how sudden it was. Many trekkers assumed October weather would be manageable, but this year conditions deviated dramatically. As one participant said, the guide said he had never encountered such weather in October. The National Day holiday in China had spurred a surge in tourism to risky high-altitude routes, increasing exposure. Already difficult terrain, thin air, and remoteness magnified every small failure: a collapsed route, a delay, a miscommunication into life or death stakes. Now shifting gears to the south, Typhoon Matmo, also known by its local designations, crashed into Guangdong, Hainan, and nearby coastal areas, leaving a wake of flooding, damage, and disruption. As of the latest reports, approximately 347,000 people were evacuated in anticipation of the storm. The typhoon made landfall with sustained winds around 151 km/h, 94 mph, prompting China's National Meteorological Center to issue a red alert, the highest warning level. Storm surge, torrential rain, flooding, and infrastructure damage followed. Ferry services, flights, and road transport were suspended. Even during the National Day holiday, a peak travel and tourism period, the preparations and impact caused major disruptions. As the storm progressed inland, it weakened into a tropical depression, but heavy rains continued to threaten flood-prone zones, especially in Guangxi and toward northern Vietnam. The timing and intensity of Matmo illustrate how vulnerable coastal and low-lying communities are, especially when storms hit during holiday periods or when infrastructure is already stressed. The sheer number of people displaced, the closure of transport, and the threat of landslides and inland flooding show that even after landfall, the danger is far from over. Now, comparing the two events side by side, what lessons emerge? First, both underscore how extreme weather is increasingly unpredictable and extreme. In Tibet, the blizzard was more severe than expected for October, and trekkers were caught off guard. In Guangdong, the typhoon struck amid mass travel, forcing large-scale evacuation and chaos. The spectrum is broad. From high-altitude snow to coastal wind and flooding, climate extremes are not confined to a single domain. Second, both events test the limits of preparedness, response, and infrastructure. In Tibet, the remoteness of the routes, the altitude, and lack of immediate shelters made rescue far more difficult. Every minute counts when hypothermia can set in. In Guangdong, warning systems, evacuation planning, transport shutdowns, and emergency logistics were critical, and yet the sheer scale tested them. Neither scenario allows for perfect response, but early warnings, coordination, and resources clearly make the difference between survival and catastrophe. Third, human factors matter enormously. Many in Tibet were motivated by holiday tourism, perhaps underestimating risk. In Guangdong, the holiday season meant more people, more travel, and higher stakes for disruptions. Decision making under uncertainty when to evacuate, when to halt operations, how to allocate resources becomes a matter of lives. Fourth, these events are part of a broader trend. Across the Himalayas and in monsoon-affected regions, scientists have noted increases in erratic precipitation patterns, glacial melt, shifting seasons, and extreme events. Coastal regions face rising seas, more powerful storms, and greater intensity. The overlapping vulnerabilities in mountain zones, in rural areas, in coastal towns suggest that no region is immune. So, what should be done for high-altitude areas? Stronger forecasting, real-time weather monitoring, mobile shelters or refuges along trekking routes, better communication systems, and stricter limits on holiday period access may help. Training of guides and support staff in emergency protocols and altitude medicine is vital. For example, having caches of supplies, prepositioned rescue teams, and drone monitoring could reduce response times dramatically. For typhoon-prone regions, investing in resilient infrastructure, roads that drain, stronger levees, early warning systems, community shelters, enforcing land use, zoning away from floodplains, and maintaining efficient mass evacuation procedures are key. Importantly, building redundancy in transport, power, and communications so that a single failure doesn't cascade is essential. At the national level, integrating forecasting across domains: mountain meteorology, coastal storm forecasting, climate modeling, and sharing data between regions can help anticipate compound risks, e.g., when a mountain storm upstream might feed into flood risk downstream. Also, improving public awareness, early warning communication channels, and drills can make a real difference. Beyond that, these events raise larger questions. As climate change accelerates, will such extremes become more frequent, more severe, or more unpredictable? If so, governments, local communities, and individuals must shift from responding to preparing. Where once a 100-year event was rare, it may no longer be so. When we speak of China is buried, in the context of the blizzard, the phrase underscores how even a region often perceived as plateau and permafrost can be overwhelmed by snow under the right conditions. When we say Typhoon Matmo devastates Guangdong, that contrasts the fragile interface between sea and land, reminding us that populous, economically central regions are not immune. In closing, these twin disasters reinforce the urgent need for a paradigm shift, from reaction to anticipation, from local firefighting to systemic resilience. Extreme weather will keep pushing boundaries. How we adapt, how we coordinate, and how we build for the worst will define how many lives are spared. Let us take these tragedies not only as warnings but as imperatives. To invest, to learn, to prepare, to care for each other, because when nature moves at its most violent, humanity must not be caught unready. Thanks for watching. Stay safe, stay informed, and I'll see you next time.